It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Brouhaha. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee ready to tee it up and kick it off. How you like that little play on words? Tee it up and kick it off. Of course, you could tee it up, but when you tee it up, you don't necessarily have to kick it.
No, you
can hit it with a driver or a 7-iron.
Yeah, and sometimes you end up kicking it.
That's right. Sometimes you squiv it like I do, or shank it. But anyway,
you just throw it on. I hit it out that way somewhere.
Well, Dale, big weekend in sports. A lot of football being played. A lot of everything being played. Baseball all over the place. So let's look at your sideline view. How about that deal over with the Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles? What a win!
Hey, that was astonishing. I mean, they give up a 75-yard touchdown with like a minute something to go. And the other team, Texas State, they hadn't done anything against them all day, you know. And I mean, Southern Miss defense dominated.
Yeah.
You know, like 12 tackles for loss and a bunch of sacks. I think Quentin Bivens from Wayne County got a couple sacks in the ball game. So they dominated the game, but one pass play, and all of a sudden they're behind. Of course, before that series, they went down and fumbled the football. Down around the 20-yard line. They had kicked the field goal, been 9-up, and it wouldn't have mattered. But they came back and won, and it was, it was a great win for them. That gives them one more win than they had last year.
You know, and I'm looking back at that game they won against Tulane. I'm going to tell you what, Tulane's winning some football games.
Yeah, that's all the loss they've had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Golden Eagles, man.
And so they're doing Southern's playing kind of inspired football right now.
They really are.
I mean, their defense is really carrying them. Yeah. Really carrying them.
Well, I always said one of the ways to win, run the ball and play good defense. So
true.
There you go. There you go. Ole Miss, that was a little. I was a little disappointed. And I know we got some Tiger fans out there. Some of my best friends in the world are Tiger fans. But I got to tell you, I'm not happy with the outcome of that game. Of course, they still got a good season going, and one loss does not a season ruin.
Yeah, and Ole Miss has played basically like that all year. They'll have a good half, and then they'll not do well, or they'll have a terrible first half and play really well in the second half, like they did against Vanderbilt. So yeah, I mean, that's been their ammo all year, and but Ole Miss has still got it tough. They got to go to A&M this week. And then they host Alabama, and then they got to go to Arkansas, and they host Mississippi State. And really, you're probably not going to be favored in any of those road games now.
Yeah.
And you might not be favored in one of your home games, at least, against Alabama, and maybe not even against Mississippi State, depending on if these losses continue.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of stuff going on, and all these things, you talking about the playoffs, yeah, we talking about the playoffs. But just consider how crazy it could get. Consider a couple of things. Oregon wins out. They got one loss to Georgia in a Pac-12 championship. They should be in the playoffs, you would think, with a record like that, and they could very well run the table the rest of the way. Bo Nix got them going out there with them pretty uniforms. They got those pink numbers and all that kind of stuff. That looks good. Georgia beats Tennessee and loses to a one-loss Bama in the championship game. Could happen. Then you got Georgia and TCU wins out. TCU, man, they are playing some football, and if they win out in a Big 12, there's an invitation. I mean, Oklahoma's proven that a Big 12 championship multiple times will get you to the dance. Ohio State's going to win out. Michigan could have one loss. I mean, it just goes crazy and crazy and crazy how this playoff system could work.
Well, it's and what's bad about it this year, only 4 can make it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the SEC champion may make it, but nobody else may make it.
LSU runs the table. You could have a 2-loss SEC. They're getting cranked up now. They got players and they got a good coach. And they beat an undefeated Ole Miss team. So, I mean, they get cranked up and get to playing. They could get in there.
The Daniels boy, the transfer from Arizona, really looked good for LSU Saturday.
Well, Kelly obviously knows what he's doing, and that kid had a little trouble at first, but I'm telling you, he's a player. He's got him a good one.
He does.
He's doing a good job. Dale, who you got for us tonight as our guest?
Well, we have Creg Stephenson from AL.com, and he covers all Alabama sports, from Alabama to Auburn to South Alabama to ever-who. And we had him on last year, and he was giving us some preseason picks and things like that. So we thought we'd get him in during the open date before Alabama and LSU.
Yo, baby, that's going to be a good one.
And just see if that defense is for real that we saw Saturday night.
We'll find out.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do, Dale. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsor, and then we come back. We'll come back with our guest. Right after this break, we'll see you in just a minute.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Creg Stephenson of Alabama.com. Creg, how are you doing today, Creg?
Yeah, everything's going great. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, we appreciate you being on, and we know you have your own radio show. And you said you just got out of a press conference with at Alabama. Just tell us your thoughts on the Alabama-Mississippi State game, first of all.
Well, first I was at the South Alabama press conference.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
I did watch it. No, it's all good. I watched the Alabama-Mississippi State game the other night. Not really surprised the way Alabama came out, especially after the loss to Tennessee. They have a tendency to do that when they play what they consider poorly. They come out and really hit the ground running the following week. I was a little bit bothered by the way Mississippi State played because I thought they had gotten better.
That's going to go, baby.
And just
be a good.
See if just finish that deep deal that was for real Saturday we saw tonight.
Find out. We'll find.
Yep.
Well, let's do. I'll tell you what. Let's take a.
Same Mississippi State team Alabama's been playing for years. I mean, obviously they scored a touchdown right at the end of the game. But the first touchdown they scored in Tuscaloosa in 2014, and obviously Mississippi State's not necessarily measured against Alabama. That's a difficult standard. But you can't get blown out every time you play them. It's not good. And, I'm not sure what that says. They just had a bad week or what, but not a very encouraging sign for the Bulldogs, I didn't think.
What do you think it is about, because I remember Lane Kiffin last year, Ole Miss, they go over there and they try all these fourth down plays early in the ball game, and they don't put any points on the board. And then they're in the hole,
Right.
and it seemed like Leach took the same philosophy the other night. He's trying to gamble one time from his own 29. That's a little early in the game for me, especially against a pretty good defense like Alabama has. I say Alabama has a good defense because, sometimes it shows up and sometimes it doesn't. And we'll get into that just a little bit later. But are you amazed at some of these guys that have these wide open offenses that take such risk and gambles?
Well, I think you have to do that to a certain extent against a team like Alabama because, when not last year, but was it 2 years ago when Ole Miss played Alabama, Kiffin went forward a bunch on fourth down, and he made them that time, and they played a really good game and had a chance, whereas last year they really didn't. So I don't really necessarily have an issue with that. I just wonder if it's a matchup thing for Mississippi State because the teams that have beaten or played well against Alabama this year, Tennessee, Texas A&M, others, they have been able to find one-on-one matchups down the field against Alabama's weak spot, which is its safeties. Mississippi State was not able to do that. People think of the air raid; they're just going to air it out and throw it all over the place down the field. But it's really kind of a ball control passing game, and you're not going to beat Alabama with their defensive speed like that. So, again, it may just be stylistically they're not set up to succeed against Alabama.
The defense that showed up against Tennessee for Alabama, it didn't look pretty that day. But what was is it just the level of competition between one week and another week? Is Tennessee probably the only team that could put 52 points on Alabama in the SEC?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I also think that that Alabama played a much cleaner game against Mississippi State. They did, against Tennessee, they had 18 penalties, and that obviously that put them in a huge hole. But again, Tennessee, they used their big receivers to find the right matchups against Alabama's defense, and I think those guys played a little better against State. One, Eli Ricks, who was a transfer from LSU, preseason All-American, had not hardly played at all this year, but he not only played against State, but played really well. I think he had 5 pass breakups or something like that, and it just gave him another really good player in their secondary. And Texas A&M, they have won on fine, been able to one on that matchup deal. They count the field Alabama against our spot once we could say just as 50. It was not Mississippi State to do that. Not able to do that. Think of people afraid that the air and just going to put it all out and throw it down over the place. Really feel but a ball, kind of a whole pass control game and game. Going to beat out. You're not with their Alabama speed like that. So again, it just stylistically the list said they're not succeed up to Alabama against Alabama.
The defense,
to the season or even just a couple of weeks ago, LSU is playing really well. Obviously, I know you guys watched them against Ole Miss, and they controlled that game, man. I mean, I think Brian Kelly won. I think Brian Kelly is a really, really good coach. I think a lot of the things people have hoped for with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M are actually true with Brian Kelly at LSU. He is a good coach. I mean, even though his Notre Dame teams got blown out when they got in the playoffs, that wasn't on Brian Kelly. That was just because he didn't have as much talent. You get him to LSU, you look at the NFL, just about every team has an offensive or defensive lineman that played at Notre Dame. There's a lot of really good ones recruited by Brian Kelly. You get him in place with the skill talent he can recruit at LSU, and I really think they're going to win a national championship down there before too long. I mean, every coach has been there since Saban has done it, and I really, really think that's going to be interesting. I don't know LSU's going to beat them this year, but Daniels, the quarterback transfer from Arizona State, played a great game against Ole Miss. I'm just not convinced. I just don't know that they're going to be able to stop Alabama necessarily, but it's a lot. Going to be a lot more competitive than I thought it was, even 2 weeks ago.
So is Alabama, and last question about Alabama, but is Alabama as good as they have been in the past, or is there or has the talent level dropped off, or is just the competition in the SEC getting better?
I think there's some of that, some truth to both of those, but no, I don't. Well, they're as talented as they've ever been. I mean, I think that if you just look at the recruiting rankings, they're still 1, 2 in the country every year. There's still, 40 guys on that roster are going to have a chance to play in the NFL. I just don't know that they are coached as well as they have been in the past, and they're definitely not as disciplined as they are in the past. Now, the reason for that, I can't say. I'm not ready to sit here and say Saban's slipping because, as soon as we say that, it seems like they come back and win 2 national championships in the next 3 years, like we've said every other time. But they're definitely not playing with the discipline that they have played in the past. They are definitely more vulnerable than they have been in the past. And I do agree that some of that is the SEC rising up to meet them. There are better coaches across the league than there have been, maybe at any time ever.
Well, on the coaching situation at Alabama, you hear Saban may be hanging it up in 3, 4, 5 years or next year or what it is. But, the thing interesting to me is that his OC and his DC, I think his OC, this is his second year, O'Brien, and Skip Golden has been with him for 4 or 5 years. And, it just seems in the past that every time those coordinators would do something, they get a head coaching job. So are these guys really not up to caliber, or
they've ever been? I think that I think you just with Chris look at things. They're shooting rank 1, still in the country in the year this year every still 40. From that raw guys don't have a chance to in the NFL play. So I just know they don't coach there well as been in they have in their past. Now it's definitely not as disciplined as now they are. And for that, the reason it's that I can't. I'm not going to sit here and let things happen because as soon as we had it say that, they come back like 2 national and win the championship 3 in the next years every other. We've said every time, but the NFL, either as coordinator or head coach, there's a lot of churn in that league every year. Golding, I'm less sure about. I think that not sure he's head coaching material just yet. But I don't blame him for a lot of what's going on, because I think, a lot of people are talking about, what they do defensively, schematically, maybe is a little out of date. And I think that's on Saban. I think that they're running Nick Saban's defense, and he's the one that has to adjust. I don't think that you can hang this one on Pete Golding. Now, that's not to say he won't get fired, but I think this is on Nick Saban more than it is on Golding.
Well, has Saban really ever fired an assistant coach? I mean, outright fired one?
Not necessarily. No, usually he finds him another job. So I think that
well, that was nice.
he finds him Tosh Lapoy, who was the defensive coordinator, right after Pruitt left to go to Tennessee, Lapoy was the defensive coordinator. And, he was there for a year, and then he wound up as the defensive line coach for the Cleveland Browns. And people were talking about, he got promoted to the NFL. No, he was going to get fired. Nick Saban went and found him another job so he wouldn't have to fire him. So, no, he does do that a lot. And maybe that happens with Golding. I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but, we'll see.
All right, let's switch those gears over and go eastward over there to the Plains there. Now, Auburn, really, I would talk football with you about it as far as what's going on over there, but I'm sure they would like to have a more experienced quarterback at this time. But what are they going to do with the head coach over there? You think they'll actually keep him, or will they let him have a little bit more rope?
No, I think he's done. I think it's just a matter of when. I was a little surprised that they didn't fire him the day after the Ole Miss game, because they had a bye week coming up. And, he actually came down here on that Monday night after the Ole Miss game and spoke in Mobile. And I was like, I was kind of surprised he showed up. I thought he was going to be fired by now. But I think the issue is they don't really have an interim coach they're comfortable with. The coordinators are both Brian Harsin guys. Nobody else on that staff has ever been a head coach at any level. They don't have an AD right now. They're probably going to have an AD within the next week or so, and maybe they'll make a move then. But I think probably the day after the regular season ends, which they play Alabama the last game, I think that's what will happen. I would bet everything in my pocket and maybe everything in your pocket that he is not the coach next season.
Well, you ain't going to get much out of mine now. Go ahead and depend on your pocket. Okay?
Yeah, well.
You know how that goes. Alabama pays a little bit more than Mississippi now. But no.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There you go. Anyway. All right, well, tell us, listen, Southern Miss is in the Sun Belt, and they kind of had a miracle win. But what going to do? What are they going to coach with the head? Are they over there? You think they'll actually keep him, or will they let him a little bit more rope?
No, he's done. I think he's just done. I think when matter. I was in a little surprised that fired. They didn't after the day of the game. Ole Miss had because they come in a bye week. Up and came down. He actually came on here Monday on that after the night game at the Ole Miss and Mobile spoke deal, and I covered him a little bit in college when he was at North Alabama, and he's a really, really bright guy, a Mississippi guy, and I know that matters to the people down there. And he's really dedicated to getting that program turned around. He didn't have a lot to work with when he got there, but I think he's slowly rebuilding it a little bit. They've had some injuries at quarterback this year, which have hurt them. But I think they're headed in the right direction. The move to the Sun Belt was a great move for them. I think Conference USA is kind of dying and falling apart. And moving into the Sun Belt with teams like South Alabama and Troy and Louisiana Lafayette and programs that are quote unquote peer programs for the Golden Eagles. I think it's going to be really good, not just in football, but in every sport. It's already South Alabama and Southern Miss has been a huge baseball rivalry. It will become one in basketball and everything else. So I'm really looking forward to that November 19th game over in Hattiesburg. Obviously, they played the last 2 years as a non-conference game, and now it really matters. So, I like what they're doing over there, and I think they're definitely headed upward.
Do you think Troy is the favorite in the West as we speak right now?
I think they have to be just because they beat South Alabama already. They beat they beat Southern Miss already. Those are probably the other two top contenders, and they've played 5 conference games, so they're 4-1. South Alabama and Southern Miss are both 2-1. they got, so in theory they could catch up, but Troy would have the tiebreaker on either one. Troy does play at Louisiana Lafayette next week, not this week, but next week. That's going to be a big game. If Troy wins that one, they're pretty much locked into the championship game. If they lose that one, though, maybe the winner of South Alabama and Southern Miss sneaks in the back door.
Now, where do they play the South Alabama game? I mean, to the championship game.
It's on campus, whichever division winner is higher ranked.
Okay,
so
I got you.
Whichever one, Coastal Carolina's got one loss right now. Everybody else has at least two. So if Coastal wins their side, they're probably going to host. If it's the other way around, it just kind of depends on how they're playing down the stretch.
I want to kick a question in here for a minute, and it may be a little off topic, but
yeah.
We're starting to talk, getting closer to the bowl considerations and playoffs. Does the Sun Belt have any bowl alliances or obligations or automatic bids? They do?
Yeah, there are 5 bowl games that are tied in and some others where this depends. But the winner of the championship game goes to the New Orleans Bowl, which I think is on the 21st in the Superdome. The second place team goes to Myrtle Beach, which is on December 19th. Then after that, you kind of have a pecking order. There's the Cure Bowl, which is in Orlando. There's the Lending Tree Bowl. They changed the sponsor here in Mobile, and then the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery. Those are the top 5. You have some others. Troy at Louisiana, Lafayette, and Lafayette week. Now next this week, big game. That's going to be if Troy wins that, they're pretty much put into the championship game. The champ, they lose game. If maybe that one winner of Alabama, South Alabama, Southern Miss sneak back door.
Where do they play Alabama South Alabama game? Championship game.
It's campus on Ever to switch in winner division higher ranked. Okay. So whichever one,
I got you.
Coast one, Carolina's got Carolina lost one now every.
Well, the thing about it, Mississippi State and Ole Miss do recruit a lot of kids from out of state, and it seems like that even Jackson State has got into that mode with Dion. And it seems like that Will is saying, well, I'm just going to stay close to home, save a little gas money. And, he had like 14 transfers in, and I think about 10 or 12 were from SEC programs. So, you've got that right on Will. I think he's got a plan. I think he's going to be very successful down there and everything. Well, listen.
Yeah, the Jeff Bauer era, obviously, once they recruited they recruited the Gulf Coast in the junior college system, and then, like you said, right there in that Pine Belt area of Mississippi, and it did really well for them for a while. There's a little bit more competition now than there used to be, but you can still win that way.
Craig, this is Marshall, and I just want to tell you I don't say much except when we're out of time. So I hate to tell you, but we're out of time for our slot here. We want to thank you again for being with us and appreciate, all the information you shared with us today. And I tell you what, I was really impressed when I asked you about those bowl alliances and you spit those out. We appreciate your knowledge and your willingness to share it with us.
All right, guys. Y'all have a great day.
All right. Thanks for being with us. We're going to take a break and hear from one of our sponsors. Be back with the final segment right after this commercial.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everyone, to our final segment of tonight's Brouhaha. We appreciate Creg Stephenson for being with us again, and that's his second time on the show, and he's very enjoyable.
He is. He tells me, I think he filled us in about the Tide pretty good.
I think he did.
He told us about the Auburn situation, and told a little bit about South Alabama and Troy and Southern Miss, and he was right on speed there. Talked about Mississippi State not looking good.
Yeah.
Of course, Alabama makes a lot of people not.
Don't they though? Well, listen, we got a blank slate here for our final segment.
We do.
We got a blank slate, and I'm gonna write Jimbo Fisher's name on it. I got an article right here from the Bro Bible. Okay. It says Jimbo Fisher's complete fleecing of Texas A&M continues after third straight loss. Jimbo, they paying him about $100 million. Now listen to this. Texas A&M will have to pay Jimbo Fisher, and I'm saying this because I don't think that he's performing up to with the recruiting classes that he's had. I don't know that they're performing up to the level that's going to make the powers that be at Texas A&M happy. Now, they may not be happy, but there's not a whole lot they can do about it except spend about $85 million to get rid of him. I mean, do you track any of that, Dale?
Let's build high.
Welcome back. Welcome to everyone. Final hour of tonight's segment of Brouhaha. Appreciate with Creg for Stephenson with us being again. He's on time on the second show. He's very enjoyable.
Yes, he had. I think he felt tired, but pretty good.
Yeah, I think he did.
Was about to talk to Auburn anyway. About Alabama, South and Southern Troy. And he was right on. He there top speed. He about my looking state.
Yeah,
good. Of course, I make a lot.
That makes me wonder when you say we're going to pay you $85 million or $95 million, no matter how you perform, we're guaranteeing it. Are those people very smart?
Well, I mean, there's not much incentive there, is there?
He doesn't even have to show. I mean, he doesn't have to work, recruit. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm just saying you give a guy here's $90 million, you don't have to win to get it.
Well, you know what? They'll, if they really want to get rid of somebody, and you know this from just even outside the colleges and universities and things like that, they can find a way. I mean, it may be, hey, you gave this kid illegal money, so we're going to have to fire you. You broke NCAA rules. I don't know, if they want to get rid of them, I think they probably could. But, I'm like this. I just believe that there should be a limit on how long these contracts need to go, because state of Mississippi's got it a 4, but it's a rollover too. Yeah. That at least they'd be in there for 4. But Texas 10 years, that's a long time.
And the fully guaranteed.
I like that. I like that.
This is his record at let's see, Jimbo's records. It's winning the 2013 BCS championship, 2014 13-1, 15 10-3, 16 10-3. 2017 he dropped down to 5-6, and guess what? He left his Christmas tree on the side of the road down there and left. All righty, it's at Texas A&M. He was 9-4 his first year. Pretty good. Playing off of Summerlin's folks. 8-5 in 19, 9-1 in 2020. But hey, last year he was 8-4, but he beat Alabama, didn't he? That made that all right. They got him a 10-year fully guaranteed contract. This year he's 3-4 so far. He is at the same point in their career through 55 games. Kevin Sumlin was fired at 39-16. Jimbo Fisher's sitting at 37-18 right now. Well, I bet you Sumlin wishes he had a guaranteed contract.
Yeah, well, Sumlin had Johnny Manziel.
That's right, Johnny Manziel, Mr. Football. I tell you what, I've beaten poor old Dabo Sweetie to death. I tell you what, he's a competitor, and I know he hates to lose. I want to throw something else at you, Dale. It's on a different topic if I can find myself here. We talk about the NIL a lot. We've talked about that over the past couple of years. It's been a hot topic. But I stumbled across something on SB Live this last couple of days I didn't know was a deal. Some states allow high school football players to receive NIL deals. In other words, for example, right here, the way I read this and understand it, we got a player up here, say at Wayne County, somebody wants to pay him some money to play, they can. But not here in Mississippi, of course, because it's not legal in Mississippi. But there's, did you know that was a deal?
Well, I do know that, and I know one certain recruit that Wayne County has played against this year. He's already committed to an SEC school. He's supposed to be guaranteed $40,000 for the next 4 years, starting January the 1st.
Hey, he was last year, 8-4 Alabama, but he beat that Alabama did all right. They got him they got fully guaranteed year contract. This year, he's here in 3-4 or so. He is same point at the same career, 55 games, 5 games, and some kept fired. Someone was 9-39. Jim 16 was sitting at Bo Fisher at 8-36 right now. 18, right? I bet you he had someone wish he got a guaranteed contract.
Yeah, well, I had someone, Manziel, Johnny
right, Johnny Manziel.
You want to hurt yourself, and because you're guaranteed $40,000 for the next 4 years.
They do the same thing at the NCAA. Watch Alabama not make the championship, the college football playoffs. Mm-hmm. See, those guys don't play in their bowl game. That started with Julius Peppers at Michigan several years ago. He said, "Well, I'm not going to play in the bowl game," and there's a lot of that goes on. And personally, I've got a problem with that. I understand why they're doing it because there's a lot of money on the table. Well, let's back up here for a minute and look at this NIL deal. There's 19 states in the United States of America right now that allows high school football players to be paid in, high school athletes to be paid NIL. Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, and that's the only one in the Southeastern Conference that has high school kids that can do it. Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Jersey, New York, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, Utah, and Washington, D.C. There's a movement, but it's an interesting thing. It's going to add a whole new dynamic to amateur sports, because it's one thing to pay them to play at the collegiate level. Now you can pay them to play at the high school level. May not can recruit them, but you can pay them to play.
What if a boy's family needs money and he decides to transfer?
There you go.
From one high school to another.
That's gonna happen in the states that it's allowed. But anyway, interesting times that we're in, Dale, with this sports situation.
Money drives everything.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
I sure could use a little. You ain't got 20 I could hold, do you?
No, that Stephenson boy we interviewed, he evidently got a little bit.
Well, listen, Dale, we're out of time. I always enjoy being with you. We want to thank our listeners for being with us this week. We want to remind you that you can track with us on Facebook at the Brouhaha and on the YouTube channel, the Brouhaha, where all of our shows are cataloged there. You can go back and see the new ones and listen to the new ones and the old ones as well. Dale, we look forward to Dale and I look forward to being back with you again next week. But for now, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
We'll see you next week for more Brouhaha. Take us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.